Get strong.
Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles, your weekly taste of Legacy Magic the Gathering content. You can support us at patreon.com/eternaldurdles by checking out our merch store at the links below or by supporting our sponsor, Moxfield. Thanks so much. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Yo, with you as always, Phil Bleckman. Bro, I want to fucking talk about ninjas, my guy.
You want to talk about ninjas? Let's talk about ninjas. I've been waiting to talk about ninjas all day.
All right, let's get it. Let's just dive right in. We're going to talk about what stuff has stuck out from Kamigawa so far. We've had a full 4.5 days with the set, or something. Who knows? Who cares?
4.5 days.
Joe Dyer posted his stuff about what is stuck so far in Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Beseiju
check
is
that
colder.
out on MTG Goldfish, the This Week in Legacy post-Neon metagame report.
Shout out to Joe. The Beseiju who endures, that was the hotness coming in. It's a role player at best so far, nothing beyond that, although people have been
I didn't expect anybody to win, use it as a win condition,
But bro, I thought Moon Circuit Hacker was going to be the hotness, man.
Well, I think the breakout card from this set right now is Kappa Cannoneer, right?
Yeah, Kappa Cannoneer, because it actually had a home, right?
Yeah.
It already had a deck that wanted exactly what it's offering, which is another cheap threat that can close a game fast, that gives the deck an entirely different angle than what it had before, because now you have this Voltron thing that doesn't get stopped in the red zone.
Whereas, and it's also big. It takes that go wide strategy that 8cast kind of already has going, and it just goes. And I'm a big thing that is fueled by your go wide strategy, but also is just a huge beater.
Well, Kappa Cannoneer works. Yeah, it works when you are in a high resource situation, but it also works when you're in a low resource situation, because at ETBs as a 5/5, and then every if you're hellbent and just draw an artifact, it's 6/6 unblockable, untouchable getting in. So it's it's just a fast clock once it comes down after you've emptied your hand. So it's just giving your deck what is almost functionally reach after it sticks on the table.
Yeah.
So
and Ward 4 is nothing to squawk at.
The evolution of the deck going from Karn and Urza to cutting all of the 4-drops and just being on Emery and Sai, and then being on Hull Breacher sometimes with the Echo package, and then getting rid of the Echo package and just being faster on the actual 8 Thoughtcast effects. But all of those previous versions of the deck, they were all high resource decks functionally. They were similar to Storm. They need a lot of resources. They do really poorly when you're in a low resource situation. And Kappa Cannoneer just doesn't care. Kappa Cannoneer is going to be good in both high and low resource situations, as long as you don't top deck it after they've already wrapped your board with a meltdown or something. So it was pretty clear that Kappa Cannoneer was going to do work, because it has a home and it's playing a role in that home that deck actively wanted. So it filled the niche coming in. Whereas all these other cards, specifically, I want to talk about Moon Circuit Hacker, because I thought Ninjas was going to get a really nice boon from this. And it doesn't seem like anybody's really interested in trying out Ninjas, because so far there's only been one list that has any success, and it's not even necessarily in a major event. We can talk about it and where it went, but I thought Moon Circuit Hacker, just the density of Ninjas was going to go up. But I thought that the variants of Ninjas could also be a play. I thought this would also give access to Ninjas being able to get rid of black and just play blue, splash another color if they wanted to. So
you're completely off the idea that Satoro Umezawa and just whoops, I have an Emrakul or something like that.
Yeah, if you want to meme and just be worth show and tell, you can.
Yeah, I think for what it's worth, I think that you could have that blue black Ninjas deck and then just also have the Satoro Umezawa situation, because by itself that card is fine because of the extra ability on top. Not that everything has ninjutsu ability, but whenever you activate ninjutsu, you get to look at the top 3 cards and put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom. I think that's still fine. Is it legacy fine? I don't know. But what I'll say is that card does enough without trying to Voltron your deck into some kind of a show and tell thing that I think it is playable.
I think if you were going to play Satoru, and people have so far on they're like YouTube vids and it have memed with the Blightsteel Colossus. I think the only realistic way to build that deck is if you're putting those kinds of fatties in your deck, you have to be pairing it with Show and Tell. And if you don't have Eurekas and want to play blue-black Show and Tell, you can play Sotawaru. Is that how it's pronounced? Sataru? Sataru. Yeah, you can play your Satarus with like your Baleful Strixes. Stringes. The plural of Strix is Stringes. So you can play your Baleful Stringes in a blue-black version of the deck, and then you essentially will have 8 Show and Tells with Sataru on top of Show and Tell alongside your fatties. So I think like that's the more realistic approach to Sataru is just Show and Tells 5 through 8 when you don't own Eurekas, because Eurekas are like $600.
You can also rock the you can rock the black to basics tech too, where you play back to basics in a blue-black deck, and this is a fine blue-black deck to do that in, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, I don't think Sataru has really any home because he's super clunky. So I think as pieces as Show and Tells 5 through 8, that's reasonable if you're looking to play that kind of deck and you're uninterested in Burning Wish and putting a Show and Tell on the sideboard, or if you don't want to play Sneak and Show. But when it comes to ninjas, I thought Moon Circuit Hacker being an additional ninja that you can ninjutsu for 1 to go up cards means that you're not priced into only playing the playable ninjas, which were Eureka, Ingenious Infiltrator, and then like the enablers. Now that you have Moon Circuit Hacker and Ninja the Deep Hours, I was like, okay, you have at least 8 ninjas there. Plus, you can play Thousand Phase Shadow, which is the new enabler for ninjas from the new set. That's also a payoff. So you theoretically can have 12 ninjas in your deck by doing that, and then in addition to your enablers, and then it can put you away from having to play the black cards if you don't want to be playing black, because like Pyroblast is so good. And, it's just like, I thought it was going to open up avenues for ninjas to play other color combinations rather than just being pigeonholed in the blue-black, because that's where the ninja quote payoffs are, because now they gave you more ninja payoffs that aren't in blue and black. So,
I have a quick question that's unrelated to ninjas, but have you given, actually, I'll start it this way. How do you feel about Jace the Mind Sculptor right now? I think a Miracles deck.
Jace the Mind Sculptor better than all. Anybody who's dunking on Jace because it's not as good, it's not as good.
I'm just saying as a card to put in your Miracles deck, like not against other Planeswalkers. I'm just saying as like a card to throw in that deck. As a 4 mana thing that you do.
As me who has played Miracles forever, I'm not leaving home without 3 Jace the Mind Sculptor at least in my deck. I think anytime people want to cut Jace, anytime people want to cut Jace, I'm just like, you are removing the part of your deck that is so important when you're at least when you're playing Miracles, that it is so vital to the strategy of that deck after you have any reasonable amount of development. Jace is so vital that cutting it is insane to me.
I want to suggest that Shorikai Genesis Engine is a very interesting card that is a threat that gets around Terminus. You don't have to worry about it being Terminus away. Rocks some card advantage for you. I don't know, man. I think that card's really cool. And it's no Jace for sure, but like it offers like a completely different thing that we've never really seen in a Miracles deck by like having access to an 8/8 as a fatty. And it's got the card draw thing. You get to use your graveyard. That fuels your Snapcaster Mages. I like it. I like that card a lot.
Here's the thing. I don't think that they necessarily have to compete. I think if you wanted to play a Shorikai as a 1 of or a 2 of in your deck, you can. But I would very much advocate to not cut your Jace the Mind Sculptors if you're playing Miracles. I like the idea of Shorikai being able to discard. So the discard outlet on Shorikai is actually really interesting, because if you have a Miracle in your hand, like let's say you have an Entreat the Angels in your hand, it's actually better off in your graveyard than in your hand if you don't have Brainstorm, because being able to put it back on top with Mystic Sanctuary is really important. And that type of thing comes up a lot.
You've just argued for Shorikai right there. That's one spot, right?
In the early game, if you can ever dump a Terminus or an Entreat the Angels like off a Predict or something, it's going to do a lot of work for you later on when you on 4 mana can potentially Mystic Sanctuary back to the top and essentially get that tutor effect, if you will, exactly where you want. And it being in your graveyard is a valuable tool. So Jace kind of already does that anyway. Like that's the point, right? Jace gets the brainstorm and put all that stuff on top. So it's like if they are committed to the board and you Jace and you put a Terminus back on top and then they fight over the Jace is down, but then you also traded Jace for their board because you Terminus them. Yeah. And the whole strength of the deck is Terminus. For people who want to try out Shorikai, I'm not against it. It's another 4-mana threat that's going to die to Pyroblast. Like, that's shitty, but of course it's a hell of a draw engine that also produces bodies. So I'm not.
I just like that. Like, if you put that down, your opponent can't just path it away, or path it, swords it away. It just seems it's not an enchantment, so it is. You can artifact remove it, but like it's slightly harder to remove as a threat than like a random creature. You can also just go wide with it. Like it's putting a body on the board each turn, and that's enough to like kill opponents. Like if you're a control deck, killing your opponent's planeswalkers is a real pain because you literally have to spend a card to do it most of the time. And this is like, oh look, I've got like 3 1/1s. I'll just attack your Jace and like kill him. You're gonna. So
there's two avenues. When Shorikai first came out, I thought about, could this be like that over-the-top haymaker that you bring in for grindy control mirrors, right? Because
also, like block it with your Grizzlebrand if you're gonna do that.
Every card, every time you activate a Shorikai, it's putting you up 2 resources, right? You make a body plus you went up a card because you drew 2, discorded 1. So after the first activation,
look, the graveyard is a resource. We keep saying
the graveyard's a resource.
Graveyard is a resource.
Here's the thing: if you want to build a Shorikai, at least in a control version of in a control deck, as opposed to like an artifact combo deck that's doing like untapped shenanigans, there are 2 things that you can do when you're building a control deck. Knowing that your opponents are going to bring in a bunch of Pyroblasts, and every deck that's playing red is playing like 4 to 5 Pyroblasts in their sideboard now. If you are building a deck like this where you're like, I want to play with Shorikai, you have to be thinking about the rest of your deck in a fashion that is overloading your opponent's Pyroblasts.
Bring in Murktides and Shorikai and Jace.
The two ways to combat Pyroblasts out of the board is you either have to dodge it, which is where things like Mentor come in, the pivot to white cards. That's where people were excited a little bit about the Wandering Emperor. It's a white card that is very difficult to prismatic ending, doesn't get hit by a Pyroblast, so you sidestep, right? So you can sidestep, or you can overload their Pyroblasts. And so when you overload their Pyroblasts, you can go in with the game plan of actively casting things into their Pyroblast because you want to clear the way. Now, what's important about that, though, is whatever Pyroblast is trading with in a control deck is likely trading up. Yeah. So as long as you're still available to develop and are picking your spots, you can do it. But those are the 2 ways to combat Pyroblast. You either sidestep it or you overload it. You can't just do a straight swap. So it's one of those. It's that type of thing where I'm more interested in having Shorikai alongside Jace the Mind Sculptor than I am as a shift. Yeah, I'm not opposed to trying Shorikai. It's another one of those. Let me rephrase. I'm not opposed to trying Shorikai, but I am opposed to replacing Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Got it. So the way I framed that was probably poor, but we got there. So we talked about.
I think that the thing about it is because it's 4 mana, people immediately assume that on the curve it has to compete with the other stuff that's on the curve, and that's not necessarily true. Because if you're playing more basics, then you're going to be able to develop longer into that position. It's also a metagame call. If I think I'm going to go up against 4-color Uro piles all day, like maybe I do want like 3 Jace and a Shorikai in my deck. That's not crazy.
So we've talked about Kappa Cannoneer. We've talked about Satoro Umezawa. We've talked about Shorikai Genesis Engine. Let's talk about Moxfield real fast.
Let's talk about Moxfield.
Our show sponsor is Moxfield. They are fastly becoming one of the all-time best deck building sites on the internet. They work on all your mobile devices. They work on obviously on your PC, on your Mac, whatnot. But just super clean website, really great. The whole thing, just like, this is just one of the cleanest deck building sites I've ever used. I'm friends with the guys who created it, so I'm a little biased, but I think we just found out the other day I'm in the top 10 of the 10 first people to have actually been on the site. I had no idea about that because I just used it like sparingly over the last 4 years. It's like, oh, my friend's project. But like, this is one of the all-time greatest sites for building decks because it's tapped into Scryfall, so you get all the Scryfall equivalents, like everything that you can do on Scryfall as far as coding and whatnot to find cards. You got that there. I don't know, man. This is, to me, like, especially for your $1, which is free. Come on.
Yeah, I think everybody uses this kind of stuff already. I mean, we've talked about this in previous casts too. It's just like, we all know that you're using your notes app or whatever for your deck lists, and having to copy and paste that stuff to share your deck lists or try and keep track of how you're manipulating those deck lists. I mean, yeah, you're biased because you know the guys, but it's really nice when the bias is also backed up by the product being good.
Like, if this wasn't something amazing that I believed in, we wouldn't be talking about it. You know,
it is one of those things. Like the number of iterations that I go through with miracles and trying out different cards. Like I'm when we talk about Tameshi in a minute, like there's a bunch of interesting brews that I've got with Tameshi that it's like, as I start testing those decks out, putting them into mock field, and then changing those numbers as those lists progress and you figure out what is working, what isn't. Being able to track those progressions is really interesting. So you don't ever double take or double back on coverage for 90s MTG at our local game shop. I'm actually wearing some of their merch right now. One of the things I constantly go back to is I play accumulated knowledge like once a month, right? I'll go back to accumulated knowledge in my miracles builds because I'm like, I gotta believe in this card. Maybe now it's good. It's never good. It is way outpaced by so many better cards that have been printed. Please don't play accumulated knowledge or frantic inventory in your deck list anymore. But I would go back to it because I would forget. I'd be like, it could be good, Zach. Maybe today is the day.
Maybe today's the day. Of course.
It's what's the Arrested Development? It's that scene where they're watching a pyramid scheme and one person turns to the other and goes, "Has this ever worked for anybody?" And the other character turns and goes, "No, but it might for us."
Yeah, of course.
That is accumulated knowledge for me.
But you say all that to say this is that Moxfield tracks your deck changes.
Yes, so every time I can look at my deck change, I can be like, "Oh, right, accumulated knowledge has never worked. Let me not fall into that trap again unless I'm willing to throw my money away."
I think that's all we have to say. It's free to join. You definitely should be on there. We've got the link to my personal deck site down at the bottom. We'll be starting one up for the show very soon. We're just slowly building things over to it. And
we put up our budget deck list from last week on there.
Yeah, the budget deck lists were there. It looks like you guys, a lot of people looked at them, so that was really cool. It was cool to see that that was something that like everybody was into and checked out. Yeah, over 109 views on Budget Miracles. Amazing.
Yeah, everybody wants to be able to look at 2012 Miracles and have it work today. So do I. That's why I shared that list.
Anyhow, let's get back to talking about Kamigawa Neon Genesis cards that we can slot into decks or just create new archetypes with.
I want to see the Ninja deck list that's like blue-red, that's playing the good red cards alongside Moon Circuit Hacker, Ninja the Deep Hours, and Thousand Face Shadow. And like maybe the Changelings, your Ornithopters, your Retrofitter Foundries like you were before, and doing work, not having to play, bad cards in your deck that don't actually convert what you need, where you're like super soft to shit like Merit Lage, like play your you can finally be the tempo deck that you've always wanted to be. And you can play, I don't know, fucking Lightning Bolt. Like, get in there. Just play your Moon Circuit Hackers. I'm a believer in Moon Circuit Hacker. I feel like it's just like once we have it in our head that a deck has to be certain colors, if it's not like Delver can do whatever it wants, right? Because the shell is just threat plus days plus wasteland. But Ninjas has only ever been blue-black. We've only ever looked at it as blue-black. And then it gets new tools and we're like, how does this fit into this blue-black shell? And I think I am advocating that we open that up because I think there's room. And I'm going to try it. Next week, I'm going to try it. And it's going to be on 90s MTG next week.
Sick.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
My boy, Kappa Tech Wrecker.
Dude, so that's what I'm talking about. Like the Green Ninja that you can pick back up that exiles artifacts and enchantments. Like the stuff is
We did
good.
not plan this.
Bro, there's
three ninjas chilling.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, I mean, if you wanted to stay on blueback ninjas, there's the ninja where every time it connects, you can discard a creature card to just kill a creature.
Ooh, I happen to know that is Silencer, something Silencer.
Dokuchi Silencer or something?
Oh, God,
Zach's looking it up, but it's 1 and a black for a 2/1 that every time it connects,
Dokuchi Silencer, yeah.
You can discard a creature card, which your deck is flush with because you're ninjas, and then that card essentially just becomes kill a creature.
It becomes or Planeswalker too.
Or Planeswalker,
it becomes a hero's downfall.
What's really nice about the Dokuchi being able to kill a Planeswalker is you only get the effect when you hit a player, not a Planeswalker. So you can get your little questing beast action in here where you can hit the player and then still catch the Planeswalker.
It's pretty good.
It's luscious. It's a luscious thing. Anyway, let's talk about Tameshi. So Tameshi, I've already been brewing with Tameshi. The idea that Tameshi can bring back, there you go. There it is on screen for people watching. So Tameshi has the activated ability of X and a white. You can return an artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield with converted mana cost X or less. But part of the cost is picking up a land. And you know me, I sure do love picking up my Mystic Sanctuaries. I sure do love playing Mishra's Bauble alongside Predict. I sure do like putting it all together in a package. Here's the rub, Zach. Once you have a Tameshi on the board, you're not going to not draw a card every turn with it, right? You're not going to not activate it, picking up your Mishra's Bauble to draw a card. You're obviously doing it. You're obviously going to do it every turn.
At least.
So you can only draw a card once per turn, but you can activate the ability as many times as you want. But you're probably only going to do it once in a control deck because you want the card draw. But you're definitely going to draw the card. It doesn't matter if you're in a position where you still need to develop. Who is saying no to drawing a card? I certainly am not. The issue with Tameshi, though, is that once you activate it and pick up a land, you will never develop past that land drop. So theoretically, you have it Tameshi on the table, you protect it, you do whatever, but if you're activating it every turn, let's say you're on 4 mana, you will never get past 4 mana.
Phil, what if that land is Mystic Sanctuary?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm picking it up.
Yeah.
Because I'm tutoring to the top of my deck every turn, and I'm drawing 2 cards every turn. So I'm going to have a Howling Mound on my side of the table, functionally tutoring to the top of my deck whatever I want every time because I'm picking up a Mystic Sanctuary. But with Tameshi picking up lands, if you're not doing something in your deck to put more lands out of the battlefield, which means that you're making your deck bad, then you will never develop past that point. So you have to take into account that your deck can't go big. It's got to be able to play small ball, and it's got to do it effectively against a lot of decks. Now, you can do that. And I think that the way to do it is you want to be able to exploit Tameshi for picking up artifacts and enchantments. So you're leaning towards artifacts and enchantments, and then you want to do so in ways that don't need to develop past like 4 or 5 mana.
Yeah. I think also you will get to a point where you have more cards than you can cast per turn, and your opponent doesn't have anything for you to interact with, and then you just stop drawing cards and start playing lands too. You will eventually bury your opponent in card advantage to the point where you're like, okay, well, I don't need to do it this turn. Play a land pass.
Obviously, the later in the game, like the more lands you have in play with Tameshi, the more powerful Tameshi is.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you only ever intend to activate it for where X is 1 at the most, assuming that you're activating it for X is 0, which is where the power actually is. Even if your deck is built to not actually ever go for more than X is 1, the more lands you have in play, the more powerful it is because it means that you have developed more, so you'll be able to just cast more spells because you're going to have way more cards because it's a Howling Mine every turn. Cards that are good with it. I really like, what's the card? Esper Sentinel. Obviously, it's just a good early game. It's going to draw out the removal spell to clear the way for Tameshi, and then you can rebuy it after the fact. Solid way to build around because an issue with Miracles or any type of control deck like that is if it's the only creature in your deck, if Tameshi is the only creature in your deck, the bolt or the plow or whatever's just been sitting, rotting in their hand is just waiting for a target. And the second you give it to them, it's lovely. But
Tameshi's what, a 2/3 too, right?
Yeah, it dies to everything.
Yeah.
But Esper Sentinel is a really nice way to clear the path. That's also going to give you the time to develop to get to Tameshi. If it nets you a card, it's amazing. If it trades up a mana, still great because it means that it's a time walk because you get to develop. Either way, excellent choice. Mishra's Bauble, obviously great. 0 mana, return it to the board. Tameshi will draw a card. Mishra's Bauble we picked up draws a card, and you rebought a land. So that means that Tameshi's activated ability is functionally a draw 2 if it picks up a Mishra's Bauble. Really solid play.
How do we feel about Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant as a like silver bullet card in like Reanimator?
Dude, when Jin-Gitaxias was spoiled, I was like, this card is so cool, and it's just another one of those things where it's worse than Grizzlebrand.
Right, of course, but like, here's the thing. So I guess to that point is like, worse than Grizzlebrand is every Reanimator target, right?
Every Reanimator spell, and
then you have Grizzlebrand has one true weakness, which is being bounced back to your hand, and that's where like Tyrant of Archon of Cruelty and Sarah Emissary are like really good alternatives. Jin-Gitaxias also is a what's it called? Is legend. So that's sort of the issue there. As far as just being another card, like I like what it offers you as far as like you're just going to stop a removal spell on the first removal spell that gets cast turn. There are a lot of decks that don't run Caracas, and they're going to have a lot of trouble getting rid of that guy.
Jin-Gitaxias is an absurdly powerful card. Like the effects on that card are insane. It's just it's just the type of thing where the types of decks that can put in that kind of fatty are you already have Grizzlebrand that's going to oust a lot of the fatties that you'd be interested in playing anyway. And then Modern Horizons 2 gave you a bunch of fatties that are just arbitrarily power creeped versions of previous fatties that you were interested in playing anyway. And Jin-Gitaxias isn't giving you a different angle from what those cards are, which are just going to kill your opponent faster to begin with. So I don't see Jin-Gitaxias ever getting to show up. I mean, maybe it'll show up in Vintage Oath, but outside of that, I don't think it's going to show up in Legacy anytime soon because the fatties that it has to compete with are too much.
That's if they fair. Ever got not really like in terms of being a fatty, like a 5/5 is kind of
I mean, I think you're doing it because it's gonna grind and it copies all of your spells. I think that's the actual powerful thing, and it's tough to remove because it counters their first thing. So I mean, in my mind, if they got rid of Grizzlebrand and actually opened up the format to being able to play other fatties, Grizzlebrand would be in the short list of things that you might play after you've maxed out on Archon.
Jin-Gitaxias would be in the short list.
Jin-Gitaxias, what did I just say?
You said Grizzlebrand.
Oh yeah, no. Once I get rid of Grizzlebrand,
would still be on the short list after it got banned.
Yeah.
People would still be like, please unban
somehow find a way. Yeah, no. I think Jin-Gitaxias would be on the short list next to like Sire of Insanity and all of that, all those cards that maybe get played as a one of here and there, but otherwise are just waiting for Grizzlebrand to not be the de facto go-to.
Yeah, because the deck is what 4 Chancellor, 4 Grizzlebrand, and like what 4 to 5 other targets.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely maxed. If you're playing Black-Red, you're definitely maxed out on Chancellors. You're close to maxed out on Grizzlebrand. And then any of the other things, you're probably playing a Sarah's Avenger, or not a Sarah's Avenger, a Sarah's Emissary. And then some number of Archon of Cruelty. And that's it. Those are just the best things to be doing. And until Grizzlebrand, like, also, Chancellor of the Annex is like, it's not good. You play it because you're trying to belch your opponent. You know, but like exactly. A 5/5 in the air isn't great. Like, if it wasn't for the 5/6, whatever. But like, I mean, the real advancement that's like that holds any of the other big fatties back from being played in Reanimator is Grizzlebrand, as has been the case for years.
Well, there we go. What other cards seem good? I'm trying to think off the top of my head here.
Dude, Otawara. What do you mean? What other cards are good? We haven't talked about Otawara yet.
The lands, obviously the lands. Yeah,
bro. Okay, so let me tell you about a deck that I played at my local. Yesterday, 2 days ago. I mean, when this is recorded, it doesn't matter. It's time as a construct. It's a flat circle.
Yes,
but
it is now Monday to the people watching this.
I was like, okay, I've been playing. I play a lot of Miracles. Maybe it's time to switch it up. I played an Aether Vial deck, right? I was like, let me play I've played many a Vendilion Click and a Venser in Miracles before, right? Legends Miracles has been a deck forever. I was like, let me just try a Yorion Wizards deck and play some Aether Vial. Let me switch it up. Let me try something different. Let me first say Aether Vial fucking sucks. And when I say it sucks, hold on, D&T players, calm down. What I mean by Aether Vial sucks is I can't tell you the number of times that I drew Aether Vial on turn 2 after keeping my 7 and how bad that feels. Nothing makes me never want to play an Aether Vial deck again than drawing Aether Vial on turn 2. I told you and Nate in our chat, I would rather keep a 7-hand opening with Ponder, Brainstorm, and 1 land whiff on both the Ponder, the Brainstorm, never hit my second land drop, and concede the game, than draw an Aether Vial on turn 2. Drawing Aether Vial on turn 2 feels so bad. I would rather play it and get it Prismatic Ending, because at least then it traded for a card. The fact that it's on turn 2 means that, okay, I just time walked myself on turn 1, because now this isn't going to do anything for the rest of the game. God, it feels awful. Please don't ever do that. Like, don't just stop. I'm never going to play Aether Vial again because of it. Anyway, getting to the actual action. So aside from all of the punts that I made playing this deck that I had never played before, there was one interaction where I realized how powerful Otawara was. I'm playing against Jeskai Days Undoing, right? Mono Firewalkers plus Hull Breacher plus Days Undoing deck.
Yeah.
Jeskai. My opponent plays, I have a legend on the board. It doesn't matter what it is. So my Otawara costs 3. My opponent has Teferi on the table, pluses, plays a Hull Breacher, and then on my draw step, plays Days Undoing.
Sick!
And of course, in that scenario, because Teferi is a fucking awful card that should never exist because it just creates unfun play patterns, it was just like, yeah, obviously, I'm just going to cast this in your draw step, catch your last card, rather than letting you untap and draw. So instead of playing it on his main phase, when I'm tapped out, he lets me untap. I draw a card. He goes for the Days Undoing. I get to Otawara back the Hull Breacher, and then we both draw a fresh 7. Now, of course, I still lost that game, obviously, but it didn't end on the spot because Otawara was able to get through Teferi. Now, this is, I guess that is to say, Otawara, very good. I mean, we knew Otawara was going to be very good, right? It's an uncounterable removal spell. Like, that's also a land that comes into play untapped for some reason. But it goes to show you that, like, I think a lot of the power level of Otawara is the fact that it can interact with the Teferi on the table.
Yep. On your opponent's turn, on your turn during non-sorcery speed times.
And there's also, like, I wonder if those lands, at least Otawara, maybe the other ones, but the discount on those cards, because they're already uncounterable, any amount of discount on them is insane. Like the times where I actually did get to pay off Otawara for 1 or 2 mana was incredible. Just knowing that it's uncounterable and that you can do it anytime is amazing. And the discount was the discount on it felt unfair. So I think there's a lot of room to explore with these cards. The card that actually made me really interested in wanting to explore was the Takenuma. Is that the name of the black one?
Yeah, that is Takenuma.
Well,
let's go with Takenuma.
Yeah, we'll correct it in a second. But the fact that one is an instant speed, mill 3, pick up a creature, disentomb a creature or a planeswalker. I'm just like, man, yeah, I want to play with fucking Turok from Modern Horizons 2 and like Liliana's and all that stuff, and just play like a lower to the ground stuff that incidentally is Legends that's playing, which is cards that you'd want to play anyway.
Yeah,
like that stuff sounds hot. And I'm way more impressed. By the way, I'm way more impressed with that stuff now because like any of those cards that trade at all, when you pick them back up, it's very reminiscent of Kolaghan's Command, where that was like a backbone interaction for a control deck for a very long time. And Takenuma just being uncounterable and being able to fill your graveyard for, I don't know, something like Uro or any of your delve threats. Like, I'm way higher on my card just from playing with Otawara. And I think that there is still room there to explore a lot.
To that end, what about the Consumes All card? What's it called?
Yeah, you want to talk about Hidetsugu Consumes All?
Yes. Yeah, I think that card is fire, and I think Joe mentioned that actually in his article.
there was a lot of back and forth on Twitter about how Hidetsugu Consumes All is the card that is going to bring Grixis back into the format.
Hey man, I'm into it. I liked the concept of Grixis control. I just didn't love that it was playing 4 colors and it had access to what's called a Deathrite Shaman. I
think that if Grixis is going to play Hidetsugu who Consumes All as a 4 of, because okay, let's talk about deck building real quick. Deck building in Legacy. I just squeezed because I'm so excited about this. Deck building in Legacy. I'm going to do a quick rundown of Miracles as an example because that's what I know best. When you're thinking about building a control deck, so if you're building a combo deck, we obviously know why we're building it. mass combo deck, A plus B combos, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to assemble a combination of cards that wins on the spot. If we're playing a control deck, the first thing to do for playing a control deck is figuring out what is the legacy power level thing to do. The build around is the power level, the legacy power level thing to do. So for 4-color control, it's Uro, right? For miracles, historically, it's been Terminus. A 1-mana Wrath the Board, potentially at instant speed, is the legacy power level thing to do. So when you're thinking, okay, I want to do the legacy power level thing, that's Terminus. Therefore, I'm going to use old top miracles because it's just a very clean example. It's why the deck was so functionally and conceptually sound. Yep. You want Terminus, therefore you want top, therefore you want counterbalance. That is the progression of the deck building that got to where it is, and then you flesh it out with things for the given meta that you anticipate finding. But conceptually, structurally, when you're building a deck, you're like, I want the legacy power level thing to do. Therefore, I want the thing that best enables the legacy power level thing to do. And therefore, I'm going to pay it off by filling out what the legacy power level A thing to do is soft to, right? Mm-hmm. Terminus controls the board. Counterbalance controls the stack. Top tied the room together.
Sure.
So if we're looking at Grixis now, if we're going to assume the position that Hidetsugu who consumes all is the legacy power level thing to do, then when you're thinking about the rest of the deck, think about, okay, Hidetsugu is the legacy power level thing to do. Therefore, I want what? Therefore, I want what? Right?
Tell me what you want.
So looking at Grixis deck lists, I think people are going to be kind of sandbagging, wanting to relive the dream of old Grixis where you're, Baleful Strixing and K-commanding back your Baleful Strixes and playing a really low-to-the-ground grindy plan where you just have a bunch of raw cards and your opponent doesn't have cards and you're just nickel and diming them with Snapcasters and Baleful Strix across the finish line. And we are well back from that. That is never going to be a thing as long as Uro exists. Yeah. The sheer threat of Uro existing in the format means that nickel and diming can never work because Uro will just obsolete that plan by itself, uncontested. So you can't do that anymore. You can't nickel and dime anymore. You got to go over the top. Hidetsugu also means that you're not going to get to play with your graveyard because it exiles all graveyards. So we're moving into a space where we don't want to play to the board on permanents that are CMC 1 or less. We can't interact with the graveyard. And what do we do from there, right? Where do we go? Well, the weakness of the deck is still going to be interacting on the stack, right? Yep. I think your counter magic's still going to be fine, but you also now have to consider what your blue count for cards is going to be. I think clearing the way for Hidetsugu to consumes all on turn 3 to be powerful is going to be important. Where I think a Thoughtseize or discard spells being able to leverage catching the stuff that Hidetsugu won't is going to be important. So Hidetsugu cares about one thing, and you being able to navigate the plan to where a game state where only that thing matters is going to be important. So look at things that can interact on the stack that can get the stuff that Hidetsugu can't. Okay. And then as you're going over the top, threats that don't care about the graveyard. Naturally, Jace the Mind Sculptor, other planeswalkers in that space totally work. And then figuring out what the weaknesses of Grixis are after the fact is going to the counterbalance section of Plan C, if you will, is where people should look to build. So the argument of Hidetsugu is going to bring Grixis back out of nowhere, I disagree. I don't think it's just going to magically bring the Grixis of old back as we knew it. I think Hidetsugu could reinvent Grixis. Yeah. But I don't think anybody has really thought through conceptually where Grixis is foundationally sound and where its weaknesses are yet.
I have to say, one of the things that I'm just kind of realizing about this, because I'm like, 4 is a lot, right? 4 is a lot to play in a deck. One thing I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one. I thought this card was legendary somehow. It's not. You could play you could slam another one and slam another one. You could eventually have 3 of these guys on the board. I thought it flipped over into a legendary creature. It just flips over into an ogre. Yeah. It's so weird to me because this is a concept in my head. I just assumed somehow that all the named in enchantments, saga enchantments from this set were legendary, but they're not.
Yeah, it also feels legendary.
It does. Yeah.
It feels legendary. It's not. Yeah. One thing is the other thing too is when you are glutted on these, there are going to be some matchups where similar to Terminus, this card just doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be cards where this is absolute nightmare for them, right? Like anytime I'm playing a Terminus deck, I'm like, if you open on Birds of Paradise, you're fucking dead, right? Like that's so good for me if I'm playing Terminus. Like if you play a Mana Dork, you're walking right into Terminus style builds.
Yeah.
Similar to this is going to be great against shit like Mox Diamond. Let's go, man. You want to go Mox Diamond Exploration?
Yeah, it's going to be good against
catch all that.
In that scenario,
You're playing, your 0-mana artifacts and trying to go wide with your 8-cast deck. Yeah, I'm going to blow that shit out, right? That stuff is going to be very good. But I think it being a black-red card, so it doesn't have the de facto failsafe of being able to pitch it to force.
Yeah,
it's going to have a similar issue where if you draw multiples and they do nothing, or if you draw one and it does nothing, similar to how Terminus doesn't do anything in those kinds of matchups, Terminus at least could trade with one large creature at some point in the game if we're in that space. Whereas if they're just not playing 0 or 1 mana permanents, this card just is going to be a bad Tormod's Crypt, right?
It's relatively unplayed, Phil, so I forget what the name of it is. But what was the red pyrokinesis pitch card?
Oh, Fury.
So
yeah, you can play Fury.
You could put a Fury in the deck and sort of even it out that way. But again, if you're not, the thing is if you're not getting value out of your Fury, because you want to hit 2 creatures with your Fury, right? That's the goal, right? So you get rid of 2 cards, they get rid of 2 cards. If you're not getting that value out of Fury, you're probably also not getting that value out of
Hidetsugu.
Yeah.
Hidetsugu.
So that's sort of a rough spot. That was also one of the good things about a lot of random blue cards with Force of Will. Force of Will is a legitimate catch-all.
There's also something that because everything about Grixis has always been about stopping the opponent. It's always ever just been a home of okay, if we're playing Hidetsugu who consumes all, we're just going to assume that we want to be wrathing the board to simplify the game state. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole space. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hidetsugu says destroy all non-mana permanents, right?
It says destroy.
So if you have 1 mana or 0 mana permanents that want to die, you can exploit that. That is unexplored space, right?
It's true.
Synthesizer, experimental synthesizer, or whatever the new artifact card.
Where's Nate at with his Zombardment deck?
There are cards that care about dying that you could exploit by presenting a board and mass wrathing your side of the table for some kind of value, right? This card could be an enabler. What that means is, in terms of deck building, if we think that Hidetsugu who consumes all is the legacy power level thing to do, and we try and enable that, it might be better to go into Grixis control. If there is a power level card at 1 mana that destroying and recurring over and over is important, or that letting them die, the trick here is that the second part of Hidetsugu exiles all graveyards. But if there's something that we want to have die or something that we want to exile from our graveyard for value, we can move Hidetsugu who consumes all from the A part of the deck to the B part of the deck. Something else is legacy level power level. It's enabled by Hidetsugu who consumes all. That is also an interaction piece. Okay. And then therefore we can tie the room together with something else. So that's where, when you're thinking about deck building, figuring out what goes in your A, your B, and your C slots is to build a conceptually sound deck. You can move those pieces around to slot in different cards to figure out what deck is actually going to do work in a given metagame.
Not every card has to be the pet card of the deck. Some of them are just the wheels.
Not every card has to be the legacy power level thing to do.
Yeah.
You should be only playing cards that are good cards, right?
For sure.
Hopefully you're only playing a 75 that has good legacy playable cards.
Unless you're playing a Lauren, then all the rules are out the window.
But if we're talking about the legacy power level thing that the deck wants to do is, you can look at every deck that exists currently and probably figure out A plus B plus C if they're not a combo deck.
Of course.
Some combo decks are just A plus B. Some combo decks are volume, so they want a bunch of things that all do the same thing. But for the most part, fair decks, quote unquote fair decks in the format, there's a legacy power level thing to do. They have something that's helping enable it, and then they have something that is tied to that second card that is tying the room together for them. And if you can figure out with each deck which part of that each card slots into, that will also help you figure out where you should interact when you're playing against those decks, but then also when you're thinking about new cards to build with, where you should figure out what cards to look at when you're building. If you're thinking to yourself, Hidetsugu is the powerful thing that I want to build around, it's going to be in your A slot. that should dictate which cards you look for the B slot. But vice versa, if you put Hidetsugu in the B slot, that's going to give you different cards to look at for the A slot.
Well, I think we can sum up everything that you just said as how you look at new cards when they come out. You know, like how to look, like what this episode is like, let's look at some new cards and see if they're worth playing. And I think everything that you said in the last 5 minutes sums up our points perfectly. Look at these new cards, see if they're worth it. Do they fit into that A, B, or C slot? And if they don't, are they a new deck? You know. So
here's an example of where I was like, when I was saying Sotawaru is better as just like show and tells 5 through 8, right? Here's an example. Show and tell is the legacy power level thing to do, right? Indeed. A. Therefore, I want big, massive fatty that's going to end the game. Insert any of them. In this case, let's just hypothetically say it's Blightsteel Colossus, right?
Right on.
I want show and tell. Therefore, I want Blightsteel Colossus. Therefore, I want Sotawaru. It's not the legacy power level thing to do, but it's going to tie the room together with what is the legacy power level thing to do, which is show and tell.
Exactly.
That's just like a clear example of like when you're looking at Sotawaru and then people are just like hand-fisting it into Ninja's decks and then it just becomes a meme. It's like, well, because there's no conceptual groundwork there. It's not foundationally sound. But if you were to put it into that type, now that's not to say that those type, like every kind of deck that is functionally sound or structurally sound will work, right? Like metagame is dependent. Tools that your opponent has to fight against it are dependent. But like when you're looking to try a deck and think this is something that I'm interested in giving a go, having something that is conceptually sound, that is structurally sound, knowing what your deck wants to be doing. I want to show and tell, but the fact that I have Sotawaru also to tie the room together is valuable. It feels like when we say it's copies 5 through 8, but if you look at it from that conceptual standpoint, it allows you to move cards in and out and knowing where to slot things and how to maneuver your deck building. And that's at least the kind of process that I go through when I'm thinking about deck building.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, we're coming to the end of the episode. I wanted to make sure that we thank all of our Patreon supporters. Appreciate you all. You're keeping us on our toes, and we're putting these up every week again now. I also wanted to mention that we have the merch store. Look at this.
Wow, look at that. Look at that.
Drink coffee.
Look at that really good looking mug. Wow, you look so handsome drinking from that mug.
I wanted to start this episode off with me just being like,
oh my gosh, dude!
Oh,
look
hello.
At you
Sorry, I was on my phone. How cool is this?
You making a call on your Eternal Durdles phone. You look so thin and handsome.
I mean, maybe this is just a me thing. I love this. I love everything about this. It's just a good. It's a solid phone case. But yeah, I just we've got I don't even want to run over and get them, but we got the backpack, we got the fanny pack, we've got really nice new t-shirts with our new logo. I mean, everything's got our brand new logo on it. So you're gonna get that high quality logo.
That logo is. I mean, I don't know about. I feel like that logo is really bringing a nice glow to your eyes here.
Oh man, thanks. Anyhow, so I wanted to point that out. That link is also in the doobly-doo. Remember, join Moxfield. Get in there, check that out. Definitely start building decks on there. And then I think that's it for us this week, Phil.
Yeah, join the Discord.
Yeah, get on the Discord, guys. Come on.
And if you have your brews that you're thinking about, or the decks that you've played about forever, look at your deck. Think about A plus B plus C construction about when you're thinking about the legacy power level thing to do, and let us know in the Discord if that has helped you articulate why your deck is working or not working at a more structural level.
And one last thing, I wanted to shout out Canadian Threshold for their shout out when we were talking about the Invoke cycle. I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we listened to your episode, Canadian Threshold. We appreciate your shout outs. If anybody who hasn't listened to them, you definitely should. They're just another really solid podcast that I listened to, and I had no idea that they listened to us. So the community grows stronger together.
It's wild how tight knit the community is, and we're just all isolated right now. It's really what it comes down to. Anyhow, have a great week, everybody. Phil, I'll see you next week. Enjoy.
Later on.
Turn 1, exploration, churn these fields, crop rotation, sifting meadows, elves reclaiming, Bajuka, bog drains yards away, then we cast our way into the north. Dark depths abound, the legend scores of merit lage. In its slumber, Valakut awakens, clash of thunder, the mountains crumble into rubble, flagstones split the ground asunder, plains arise, tectonic tumbler, evolving wilds fill the bunkers, we venture to the tabernacle where reliquary knights do battle with riders from the avalanches who destroy plants, farm, trees, and ranches. The journey seeking the Mox Diamond, a piece so rare no one could find it, kaleidoscope of ancient magic to fuel their whole world's demographic. The secret to its potent mana derives from the lands that have been abandoned, where Obosh is ne'er a companion, a demon, horror, nightmare, hellion. Abruptly the blood boon arises, simian spirits pray, it guides them to the legendary Eye of Ugin that harbors alien intruders who pokes the blind eternities. Warp worlds irreversibly, except Caracas, the lone safe haven where legends unite to fight to save them. They travel to the land of Thraben to break the vault where hell has stayed in, releasing demons, plagues, and angels sworn to fend off the disdainful. But a demon's contract's unfulfilled with a chain-veiled mage who's been instilled with everlasting youth and power. Quakes the dead in a field of flowers where grass glows a bright green aura that shimmers off the lotus cobras who slither in a forbidden orchard where the demon wrestles holy torture. The grotto gathers oath of druids, 9 hermits who are nature fluent, who call forth escape, shift to magma, and banish the demon in a glacial chasm. But the heat that they just seal the ground melts the age-old ice that entraps the bound. An avatar so diabolic, its reign of terror is catastrophic. Thespians have told the tale of an avatar of woe with molded scales who blocks the sun and all its light, engulfing worlds in eternal night. Where prairies are turned into Vesuvas, the demon shape shifts into Garuda, a kraken horror so infernal, some flowers bend to become nocturnal. Changelings rampage on the islands, waves cascade down on the highlands, the dryad arbors drown in silence, but the willows still burn in defiance. The flames contain the evil minion whose tentacles splash down from the deepness and bash away the punishing fire cast by the trackers who will not tire and fight to their death just like the Abzan. The rhino sees the mile of python who waked its way up on the shore where it's scorched and baked by a flash strip or which burst up from the sand below, from the lonely sandbar which split and throws a royal that spins a tornado that flings large sharks across its airflow. Garuda's pulled into a whirlpool by force so strong Jedi's can twirl through the demons sealed down in the ocean as the forest morphs in slow motion. Yavin Maya's cradle gathers the vegetation left in tatters, revitalizes all its essence with misty colors effervescent. Rain falls on the vast horizon where Vasa waves her magic bident, imprisoning the demon giant within the tides forever silent.
What's up, Phil? What it do?